All right. So one other disclaimer. I've been really busy recently, so I put this together like at the last minute. And so if there's like typos and stuff like that, there shouldn't be because it's mostly screenshots. But if there's typos, forgive me. But what I thought I'd talk about is essentially malware sandboxes, in particular ones that are free that like anybody can just use. Because let's be honest, I mean that's really cool that you can just use a free sandbox. There's a bunch of different varieties of them. We're going to kind of talk about what I like about them, what I don't like about them. And then you guys can then do whatever you want with that info. All right, so I always do a who am I slide. In a past life, I worked in politics. I really try to avoid the subject now. But I do like policy, so I'm okay talking policy with you. I'm a big geek. I also really like Viking stuff. But it's unfortunate I have to start putting this on there, though. But like all Nazis can go fuck themselves. Like, let's just get that out there. I work in InfoSec. Obviously, as a hobby, I kind of do malware RE, although I don't do hobbies as much anymore because I bought a hot tub and now I just sit in my hot tub. I really like bourbon. I really like grilling and smoking meat. Really like doing all of that while drinking bourbon. And I just thought I'd throw in there a Go Hawkeyes also. Oh, and so I have a new website. There's not that much stuff on it. But if any of you guys ever meet my partner, don't tell them that I bought it because I spent more money than I should have on it. But I own Malware.hosting now. That's really cool. All right. So why should you sandbox? So I'll be honest. When I first started doing malware reverse engineering and stuff like that, I kind of had this, I don't know, complex where I felt like it was cheating. But it is not cheating. Like, you should always start with a sandbox. I never look at any sample until it's gone through a sandbox first because, one, it just spits out a lot of really helpful information, and why would you spend time trying to hunt and find all that information manually? And two, you can take that information and a lot of times like pivot directly into the interesting parts of the malware and like actually look at the cool stuff without wasting any time. So seriously, if you're interested in malware reverse engineering or anything like that, always start with a sandbox. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to. But there are some reasons not to use a sandbox. So for example, if you don't know what's in that file and you're doing this with work stuff, like what happens if you upload a contract to a website where then I can then take that contract and download it and look at it? So I always tell people be really careful. If you don't know what it is, do some other way of looking at it first before uploading it into something where it's going to be available to everyone. Now, some employers have enough budget that they'll buy a sandbox solution where it's 100% private. You can submit it, and you can say, no one can see this sample except myself. So if you have that option, that's what I do. I'm not going to name who we have at my work, but it really kind of sucks. Like, it's a good sandbox, but it's also really not a good sandbox. So as soon as I know what it is and that it's not going to have, like, sensitive information in it, then I usually pivot to one of these open source ones, and I just use my free account that I've created on them. So that's another thing I will mention. There are a number of these sandboxes that I'm going to talk about tonight that you can't just use immediately. They do have like a vetting process that it goes through. Some of them, I don't know if like they actually like have someone look at it like they say someone looks at it. I don't know if that actually happens or not. But some of them you might wait 12, 24 or more hours before you can actually use the sandbox. So if this is something you're interested in and you want to start playing with them, I would encourage you to just do it now. So that way, if you have a need where you do really truly want to look at a sample for, you know, something more serious, you've got that access right away. All right, so I'm going to start with I'm just going to say it, the crappiest one that I know of. I think this is pretty new. I'd never heard of it until just recently. It's based out of Italy. It's like these malware reverse engineer guys from Italy decided they would stand this thing up. It's got a lot of like Japanese imagery and stuff like that. I mean, it kind of works. I mean, it works. You can submit samples to it. You do have to sign up. You get approved right away, so you can immediately start using it. But it really does kind of suck. It does let you download samples, though. So that is a key thing to remember if that's something that you have a need for. But like if you're going to search for samples, you can only search based on hashes as far as I can tell. When you upload a sample, you don't really get to set any settings or anything. It's just you upload it, and then they do their thing, and you can't customize it at all. But it is out there, and it is available. Joe Sandbox, that's another one. So they have this community version. That's what they call it, community version. I'll be honest, I think it also kind of sucks. And the biggest reason I think it kind of sucks is because they really want you to buy their commercial version. And everything about it is like trying to get you to buy their commercial paid version. You can still browse and look at samples. It has Windows 7, it has Windows 10, it has Mac, it has Android. It can do a few different Linux flavors, it does iOS. So like those are nice, and it does give you good information. But it really limits the functionality to try to get you to buy it, and it doesn't tell you it's limited until you click on it. That's another thing I really hate. Like if you can't access it without a paid membership, it'd be really nice if it was like grayed out or disabled or something. But no, they want you to waste your time and click on it. Another thing is sometimes it's nice to play back like a video of what happened during the analysis. They do screenshots only. All right, hybrid analysis. So this is the one I started with. So when I first started doing reverse engineering and stuff like that and was looking for samples that I could reverse engineer, this is where I started. You know, it's not the prettiest, but it is actually really pretty good. And they've got a lot of samples and stuff like that. This is one of those ones where it vets you. Joe Sandbox also vets you. In fact, I haven't been approved yet. I don't know, maybe my reasons for signing up weren't good enough. But you can use it without signing up. But hybrid analysis, if you want to download samples, you do have to have a membership. You have to have a login. You don't pay anything. It's free. It is on the back end Falcon Sandbox. So if you're familiar with Falcon, that is their paid commercial version that you could pay for if you wanted to. I really like it. I mean, it's pretty easy to look at samples. You download samples. Their searching for samples and types of malware is really pretty robust. There's a lot of different options there. So if you're looking for something really, really specific, I did a talk on Maldocs one time, and I could just go in there and say, give me all the Word documents, and it was really nice and easy to find those. It's got some options like simulating network traffic. It's got a feature where you can run it for heavy anti-evasion. So if you have a sample that you think is doing a lot of checking, what kind of sandbox it's running in. So sometimes samples they'll look at the CPU, they'll look at how much RAM you have, they'll look at different things to try to say, is this a real person's computer or is this a sandbox? Sometimes it'll query like the files or software that's installed. So I mean, they know, the malware authors, they know what we use to reverse engineer. So they'll look and they'll see, okay, does this person have IDA or Ghidra or any of those other kind of softwares installed? So they do have an anti-evasion, which kind of helps try to get the malware to be tricked into actually running so you can see the results that you want to see. Options for what you run it in is a little limited. So they have Windows 7, 32-bit, 64-bit. They do have Linux, they have Android. But I wish they had a few more. Another really big downside to this one is it's not interactive. So sometimes your malware needs like a little nudge, like someone to click on something to get it to execute and do the stuff that you want. You don't get that. You submit it, it runs, it gives you screenshots. There's no video. You can't interact with it. Another thing that sometimes is a pain. It's gotten a lot better, I've noticed here recently, but sometimes there's a long queue before your sandbox spins up. So sometimes I've submitted a sample, and then I wait 32 minutes for that sample to even start running. But otherwise, it's really, really good. I like it. Cape. So this is one that I know Brandon really, really likes. I, to be honest, have not used it that much. I did sign up to try to get a login for it to see a little bit more about functionality and stuff like that. I haven't been approved yet, so I don't know what all it does. But it looks pretty good. You can definitely browse samples. As you can see there, they've got some keywords and stuff. So like if you're looking for a specific malware family, it's got it there. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that much more about it because I haven't been approved yet. But I know Brandon really likes it. One really nice positive side of this is Cape is actually fully open source. As I understand it, this was the evolution from Cuckoo. So if you've heard of Cuckoo or familiar with Cuckoo, the people that were doing that project kind of left, and then they started this project. So it's not Cuckoo, but it's kind of evolved from that, as I understand it, which means you can also run as a local sandbox. So you can stand up your own server and have Cuckoo and submit files to it without having to use the web version that they're hosting. So that's really nice, especially if you're worried about what's in it. You know, like I said, if it's sensitive info, if you submit it to a version that you control the whole server and everything, that's a nice thing to be able to do. Any.run. This is another one. Really, really nice. The only caveat is it's owned by Russians. So my understanding is I believe they were actually sanctioned here recently. So if your work has like rules against things like that, keep that in mind. But it is really, really nice. Yeah. So they claim that they're not like Kaspersky, is what they claim. Their words, not mine. Anyway. So you can browse and look at samples. It's another really good place to download samples from if you're looking for samples. It has, again, really cool features like simulating network traffic and stuff like that. So if you have a sample that, you know, the C2 server is no longer there, it can try to mimic that at least enough to get it to do something. One nice thing about this one that a lot of sandboxes don't have is you can tell it where to place the file. So like the file wants to be run from app data, you can tell it to put the file in app data before executing it, which is nice. You do get a full replayable video. It's kind of weird because you mouse over it to like move through the video, but it's really neat that you have an actual video you can watch. Does a really good job of highlighting IOCs. One of the big downsides to it is unless you pay for it, you only get Windows 7 32-bit. So if you want 64-bit or if you want like a newer Windows, you don't get it. If you want Linux or something like that, you don't get it. But it is pretty nice. One other thing that's kind of a pain is every time you submit, it starts out at a 60-second time limit, which sometimes isn't enough, but you can manually bump that up to, I believe, 3 minutes of time, maybe more. I can't remember. But just be aware of that. If you think it's going to take a while to run, or if like maybe you're trying to look at a phishing website or something like that, you might have to keep an eye on that clock and bump up the time. All right, so this one is actually my last one I was going to talk about, and this is actually my current favorite. I really like this. It's called Triage. It's by a company called Hatching, if I remember correctly. It's really new. I think they've just recently started doing paid versions of it, but up till this point, it's basically been free. They've got a couple of different licenses, but again, it's free. So they've got one that's called, I think they call it Security Researcher. I don't know why I didn't sign up for that one. Anybody can. You just say, yes, I'm a researcher. I'm researching stuff. But the big difference with that is you get API access. So if you want the API, make sure you select the Researcher API, the Researcher one when you sign up for it. But again, you can browse and look at samples. You can download samples. You can search by file type and other cool fields. It, again, can do the simulated network traffic, all that other really cool stuff. Now, where it really stands out to me is it does Windows 7 through 11, 32-bit, 64-bit, a bunch of different Androids, several Linux. And then the other thing that's really nice, so I always just do the automated. And what it does is it actually usually just picks Windows 7 and Windows 10 and runs them side by side. And like literally, they're right there side by side, so you can see if it's going to behave differently or different things like that. Again, it's interactive, like any.run. Those two, they're interactive, which is a huge, huge bonus. You can run your sample for up to 30 minutes. So if you need like a long, slow burn on something, you've got 30 minutes you can submit it for. They just recently added a new feature called code analysis. And basically what it is you type in or paste in whatever code you want it to run, and then it creates a temp file and executes the code for you. So like sometimes I've used this where if there's something I've extracted from a sample and I just want to see what just that does, you can paste it in there and it'll do it. It's pretty cool. Really new. Replayable video. Another thing that I really like about this one is you can actually, instead of downloading the whole sample, you can just download certain artifacts from it. So say it dropped a file and you want to see what that dropped file is and you don't care about the rest because maybe you already have it. You can download just that dropped file, which is really, really nice. Yeah, otherwise, I don't know that I actually have anything bad to say about this one. The GUI is a little funny. I don't know if I'm sold on the GUI, but otherwise, it's really good. I really like it. So that is the last one I had to talk about. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was kind of a lot. Colin. Yeah, so Brandon's the person who told me about Triage, and it's really great. I really like it. Yeah, yep, you can download PCAPs from it. Any other questions? Who owns what? I believe the company's named Hatching. I don't know much about them. Brandon actually told me some story about them, but I can't remember what it was. Brandon Murphy? Yes, I believe so. Well, it might be a collaboration. I can't remember. Yeah. No, I mean, any.run really is a really, really great sandbox. I like, before Triage came along, this was my favorite. And I mean, yeah, I bet, but like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of like gray area questions about Kaspersky, and some people are like, oh, it's just government propaganda and different things like that. I don't know. I have no idea. I've never heard anything negative about any.run. What's that? So one thing I know that any.run did is when the sanctions started coming down, is they started taking steps to essentially like move their assets out of Russia, essentially so that they could be, they could do that whole, yes, we're a Russian company, but our servers are in Europe, not in Russia, and stuff like that. I don't know. I still think they're fine, but again, if you're gonna, it's really the paid thing with any.run that you have to watch out for, because if you're sensitive to sanctions, you want to make sure you're not violating those sanctions. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like you as an individual, you can give them your money. I think it's a little expensive, so I'm not going to give it. But again, like I said, Triage can do everything that I really like for the most part. But Triage, though, you can't tell it where to put the file. So like if you really do want it to run from app data, then any.run might be a better solution for you. So, any other questions? I can't remember off the top of my head. I spend all my money on AWS. I don't have money for anything else. All right, cool. Thank you so much. Colin, what time do you talk? Now? All right, cool. Do you guys want more tacos? More drinks? Something? 5 minutes? Nope. All right, Colin, you can start as soon as you're ready. Cool.